I'll never forget the moment that shattered every illusion I had about fairness, a moment when my own mother, without a hint of remorse, gifted the house we'd all poured our blood and sweat into to my spoiled sister. In those first 100 words, I felt my heart shatter. Years of relentless payments, sacrifices made with every paycheck, dismissed with one cold, brutal "I'm your mom, shut up." It was as if every ounce of my effort, every late-night worry and early morning grind, was invalidated in an instant. That day, my world flipped upside down, and I realized that the ties of family could be as ruthless as they were unbreakable. I had always believed that hard work and loyalty would matter in the end. 4 years, I had faithfully chipped in my hard-earned cash to pay for the house, a home that was meant to be our shared sanctuary, a place where memories were built and futures planned. Every payment I made was a testament to the sacrifices I'd willingly endured for our family's sake. I skipped nights out with friends, declined small luxuries, and even worked overtime shifts just so I could help cover the mortgage when times got tough. I believed that if I kept doing my part, someday my contributions would be recognized and appreciated. I never imagined that all of that effort would be trampled by a single, callous decision. It was a bright, brisk morning when the news hit me. I had been sitting at the kitchen table, coffee in hand, reviewing the latest bank statements that showed my payments steadily decreasing our debt, when my phone buzzed with a text from my mom. At first, I thought it was just another reminder about the bills or a quick check-in. Instead, it read, "House is now mine to gift. Enjoy your new apartment. Mom." I stared at the screen in disbelief. My mind raced. Had she really done it? I called her immediately, heart pounding, and all I got in response was a curt, "I'm your mom, shut up," as if my confusion and hurt were nothing more than annoying background noise. The fallout was immediate and brutal. My sister, always pampered and self-indulgent, suddenly found herself the sole beneficiary of the family home, a property that had been a symbol of our shared past and a future we had all hoped to secure together. Meanwhile, I was left reeling from the injustice. I felt betrayed, not just by her, but by the one person who was supposed to love and protect me, my mom. In that moment, every sacrifice I had made, every late-night worry and endless paycheck sacrifice, felt utterly worthless. I spent that day in a blur. At work, I tried to focus on the tasks at hand, but every email, every whispered conversation among my colleagues, seemed to carry a subtle undercurrent of pity or judgment. I was the one who had always been counted on, the one who had worked tirelessly to ensure our family's future, and now I was being cast aside like an afterthought. I left the office early, my mind too heavy to concentrate on anything else, and headed straight home. On the drive, the city lights blurred past my windshield as I tried to process the enormity of what had just happened. My thoughts oscillated between anger and sorrow, betrayal and disbelief. I remembered all the sacrifices I had made, working extra shifts, giving up social outings, worrying about every cent, and wondered how it all could be dismissed with such a single, callous act. I questioned whether my own self-worth had been measured by the amount of money I had contributed, and if so, I was now officially bankrupt in the currency of love and respect. When I finally reached home, the house felt eerily silent, a stark reminder of what it once symbolized. I walked through the empty halls, each step echoing with memories of laughter, family dinners, and late-night conversations about our dreams. Every room seemed to hold a ghost of what we had once shared, now tarnished by the cold reality of my mother's decision. I sat in the living room, staring blankly at the family photos on the wall, images that once made me proud, now a painful reminder that nothing was as it seemed. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, my mind a chaotic mess of thoughts and emotions. I thought about the years I'd spent working hard for a home that was supposed to be ours, a home where we'd built our lives together. I replayed every moment, every sacrifice, and the crushing realization that it had all been for nothing. I scribbled furiously in my journal, trying to capture the intensity of my emotions, the anger, the hurt, and the bitter sense of injustice. I wrote about feeling invisible, about being told that my efforts didn't matter, and about how deeply it hurt to be dismissed by the very people I had given everything to. I began questioning everything, my relationships, my purpose, and even my own self-worth. I wondered if I had been too naive, too trusting, and if I had built my life on a foundation that was as unstable as shifting sand. It was a wake-up call I never saw coming, a call to redefine what truly mattered in life. I realized that perhaps I had been so focused on securing a tangible legacy, the brick-and-mortar symbol of our family's unity, that I'd lost sight of the intangible qualities that truly make a home: love, respect, and trust. In the days that followed, I found myself at a crossroads. I knew I couldn't just sit and wallow in self-pity. I had to decide whether I would let this betrayal break me, or whether I would use it as a catalyst for change. I started to take small steps toward reclaiming my identity and rebuilding my life. I reached out to a few close friends who had always been there for me, people who saw me not as the sum of my contributions, but as a person with dreams, emotions, and a heart full of potential. Their support was a lifeline, reminding me that I wasn't alone in my struggle, and that sometimes, the most painful setbacks can lead to the most profound transformations. I decided to move out of the house, not out of spite, but because it was clear that the home I'd once cherished was no longer a sanctuary for me. I found a small apartment in a quieter part of town, a modest space that promised a fresh start, free from the weight of family expectations and painful memories. With each box I packed, I felt a mix of sorrow and liberation. I was leaving behind a chapter of my life that had been marred by neglect and injustice, and stepping into a future that, while uncertain, held the promise of renewal. In that new apartment, I began the long process of healing. I spent my evenings on the small balcony, looking out at the city skyline, and reflecting on what it meant to be truly free, to build a life on my own terms, without the burden of someone else's dismissive words. I started reading books on self-worth, personal growth, and resilience, searching for answers to the questions that now plagued me. Why did my efforts go unrecognized? What did it mean to truly value myself? Slowly, I began to understand that my worth wasn't determined by the money I paid or the sacrifices I made. It was inherent, something that no one could take away with a single, cruel remark. I also immersed myself in creative pursuits. I began writing again, not just as a way to vent, but as a means of exploring the deeper layers of my identity. I wrote about the joy of a simple life, the beauty of genuine relationships, and the inner strength I was discovering amidst the chaos. With each word, I felt a little more empowered, a little more in control of my own narrative. I started to see that this painful experience, as raw as it was, could be transformed into a story of resilience, a story of a man who, despite being cast aside, had the courage to rise, rebuild, and redefine his own destiny. In time, the anger and hurt began to give way to a quiet determination. I understood that my mother's decision, as harsh as it was, revealed more about her own flaws and limitations than it did about my worth. I began to see that the real betrayal wasn't the loss of the house, but the dismissal of my years of hard work and sacrifice. I decided that I wouldn't let that injustice define me. Instead, I vowed to channel that pain into something positive, a renewed commitment to myself and to building a future that honored my true values. I started planning small, realistic goals, improving my financial stability, deepening my relationships with friends who truly cared, and exploring new career opportunities that would allow me to grow and thrive. I enrolled in a few online courses to sharpen my skills and began attending local meetups where I could network with like-minded individuals. With every new connection, every small achievement, I felt the weight of that painful day slowly lifting, replaced by a sense of purpose and hope. Even as I worked to rebuild my professional life, the emotional scars remained a constant reminder of what I had endured. There were nights when the memories of that morning would come flooding back, the shock of reading that text message, the sound of my mother's dismissive tone, the overwhelming sense of being unappreciated. But instead of letting those memories hold me back, I began to use them as fuel to drive me forward. I would stare out at the city lights from my small window and remind myself that every setback was an opportunity to reinvent myself, to build something new from the broken pieces of the past. One evening, after a particularly challenging day, I found solace in a quiet corner of a local park. Sitting on a worn bench under the soft glow of streetlights, I allowed myself to reflect on the journey I was on. I realized that while the house had been a symbol of our family's collective dreams, it had also become a battleground for power and privilege, one that I never chose to fight. And yet, in losing that symbol, I had gained something invaluable, the chance to define my own path, free from the weight of expectations that were never mine to carry. In that moment, I made a promise to myself. I would no longer let anyone dictate my worth, no matter how loudly they shouted it. I was going to rebuild my life, not as a reaction to the hurtful words of the past, but as an affirmation of my own inherent value. I would celebrate the simplicity of my existence, the honest, unpretentious life I'd always known, and I'd work to create a future where every dollar spent, every sacrifice made, was a testament to my strength and resilience. So here I am, at the end of this chapter of pain and betrayal, with a heart scarred but not broken, and a mind determined to forge a new beginning. I know the road ahead will be long and filled with challenges, but I also know that I have the power to rise above it all, one small step at a time. I'm ready to reclaim my identity, to build a life that reflects my true self, and to show the world that no one can take away the value of hard work, loyalty, and genuine sacrifice. I'll be honest with you, there were days when I felt utterly crushed by the weight of it all, when the betrayal of that fateful gift and my mother's callous dismissal of my years of sacrifice left me questioning whether I'd ever recover. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, I began to stitch together a new identity from the broken fragments of my past. Every day was a fight, a battle against old wounds and stubborn insecurities, but it was also a journey toward something brighter. And now, I'm here to tell you how I took that pain and turned it into the foundation for a life that's finally, unapologetically mine. After leaving home that day with a heart heavy with betrayal, I spent countless nights pacing the floor of my small apartment, wondering how everything I'd worked for could be dismissed with a single, icy command: "I'm your mom, shut up." I'd devoted years to making that house a real home, a place I'd contributed to with every paycheck, every sacrifice, every moment of quiet perseverance. To see it given away to my spoiled sister, as if I were nothing more than a cog in a machine, felt like a gut punch that nearly knocked me out. But in that darkness, I found something unexpected, a spark of resolve. I remember the first morning after that day. I woke up with a raw mix of anger and sorrow, and instead of sinking back into self-pity, I forced myself to sit at the kitchen table, grab my battered journal, and simply write. I wrote until my hand cramped, pouring out every jagged emotion, the hurt, the injustice, the endless questions about why my efforts had been so easily discarded. In those pages, I began to see a story emerging, not one of defeat, but of resilience. I reminded myself that every sacrifice I'd made was proof of my capacity to endure, to work, and to build something meaningful. I decided then that I would no longer let someone else's callous decision dictate my worth. That realization set me on a path of self-reclamation. I started small, first by changing my environment. I moved into a modest apartment in a quieter part of town. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. The simple act of unpacking boxes and arranging my few cherished belongings felt symbolic. I was reclaiming my space, my life, my dignity. Every picture I hung on the wall, every piece of furniture I chose, became a declaration that I was worthy of respect and that my contributions, however quiet, mattered. Next came the long, grueling process of introspection. I enrolled in therapy, a decision that wasn't easy for someone who'd always prided himself on being self-reliant. My therapist, Dr. Martinez, helped me navigate the labyrinth of betrayal and hurt. In our sessions, we dug deep into the roots of my feelings of abandonment, dissecting the moments when I'd felt ignored and dismissed. I learned that her harsh words weren't a reflection of my value but a mirror of her own unresolved issues. This wasn't about excusing her behavior, but about freeing myself from the toxic cycle of self-doubt. With each session, I began to understand that my self-worth wasn't tied to the material contributions I made or the sacrifices I endured. It was inherent, unshakable, and independent of anyone else's judgment. While therapy helped me process the emotional fallout, I also knew I had to rebuild my professional identity. I had been the silent backbone, the one who steadily chipped away at the mortgage while everyone else took their comfort for granted. And that work had given me skills, perseverance, and a quiet sense of pride. I decided to channel those strengths into a new project. I started researching and sketching out ideas for a small business that would allow me to utilize my skills in home improvement and sustainable living, a passion I'd always harbored but never fully pursued. I envisioned a company that specialized in eco-friendly renovations, a way to help others transform their living spaces while also building a profitable venture. Every plan I made, every new idea, was a step away from the bitterness of my past and a step toward a future where I was in control. The process of starting fresh wasn't smooth sailing. I encountered bureaucratic red tape, financial setbacks, and moments when old insecurities crept back in like unwelcome shadows. I remember one particularly tough day when a potential investor pulled out at the last minute, leaving me questioning if I was ever really cut out for this. I spent that evening alone in my apartment, staring at the ceiling, the silence punctuated by the hum of the city outside. But even on my darkest days, I'd recall something Dr. Martinez once said: "Every setback is a setup for a comeback." Those words became my mantra. I knew that failure wasn't the end, it was simply part of the journey toward success. I dusted myself off, refined my pitch, and reached out to new contacts. Slowly but surely, I began to see progress. The little business idea started to gain traction, and soon I had a small team on board, each person as committed as I was to creating something that mattered. Meanwhile, I also started to mend some of the relationships that had been frayed by all the family drama. I reconnected with cousins and old friends who always believed in me, the ones who knew my quiet strength and didn't need flashy gestures to see my worth. We met up for coffee, dinners, and even a weekend camping trip. In those moments of genuine connection, I rediscovered a sense of belonging, a reminder that family isn't only defined by blood, but by the people who lift you up when you're down. I learned that forgiveness is a slow process, and while I couldn't forget the hurt, I could choose to let it shape me rather than break me. One of the most liberating experiences was when I was invited to speak at a community center about overcoming personal setbacks. Standing in front of a room full of people, I shared my story, the long years of sacrifice, the sting of rejection, and the arduous path to rebuilding my life. I spoke candidly about the moment my mother's words had shattered my world and how that pain forced me to confront my own value. The audience was rapt, and I received an outpouring of support from strangers who felt inspired by my honesty. It was in that moment I realized that my story, as painful as it was, could be a source of strength for others. I wasn't just rebuilding for myself, I was building a bridge for anyone who'd ever been made to feel less than worthy. As the months went by, my business began to grow. I secured a small office space and started working on projects that not only paid the bills but also reminded me of the power of transformation. Every renovated home was a testament to the possibility of renewal, the same kind of renewal that I had experienced in my own life. I started receiving letters from satisfied clients who praised not just the quality of our work, but the heartfelt passion behind it. Those words of appreciation, in their own quiet way, helped to heal the wounds of the past, reaffirming that my efforts and sacrifices were not in vain. On a personal note, I continued to cultivate my creative passions. I began writing poetry and short stories that captured the raw emotions of my journey. There were times when I'd sit by the window, guitar in hand, and let the melodies flow, a mix of somber tunes and hopeful anthems that expressed the complexity of my experiences. Music and writing became my outlets, my ways of processing the emotional highs and lows that came with every new day. I even started sharing some of my work online, and to my surprise, I built a small but supportive community of readers and listeners who resonated with my words. It was a reminder that art has a way of healing, of transforming pain into something universally human and beautiful. Throughout this period, I never lost sight of the lessons I'd learned from the painful gift of that house. I made it a point to reflect on my journey regularly, to celebrate the small victories and acknowledge the progress I'd made. I kept a detailed journal, not just of my setbacks but of my triumphs. The first time I closed a deal for my business, the day I reconnected with an old friend, the moment I finished a poem that perfectly captured my state of mind. Over time, these entries became a roadmap of my transformation, a living testament to the fact that even the deepest wounds can lead to the most profound growth. As I stand here now, looking back on the whirlwind of events that have defined the past few years, I feel a deep sense of gratitude mixed with quiet determination. I've learned that my worth isn't measured by the sacrifices of others or by the failures they impose on me. It's measured by the strength I muster in the face of adversity, the creativity I unleash when I'm at my lowest, and the unwavering commitment to forging my own path, regardless of how unfairly life may seem to treat me. There are still moments when the memories of that day, when my mother handed over the house without a backward glance and dismissed my years of hard work, bring a pang of sorrow or anger. But I've come to understand that those memories, as painful as they are a part of my story. They remind me of where I came from and how far I've come. I've transformed that hurt into a driving force, one that propels me to work harder, to dream bigger, and to never let anyone else define what I'm worth. I've also come to appreciate that life isn't about seeking validation from those who never had the courage to acknowledge your efforts. It's about believing in yourself, about standing up for your own truth even when it means facing criticism or rejection. My journey from that crushing moment of betrayal to the small victories of today has taught me that success isn't about material wealth or family approval, it's about personal integrity and the relentless pursuit of a life that aligns with your values. Today, I continue to build my business, my creative projects, and my relationships with an unshakable sense of purpose. I've learned to embrace simplicity, to find joy in the everyday moments that once seemed insignificant. I now wake up each morning with a quiet confidence, knowing that every setback has only made me stronger and more determined. My life is no longer defined by the things I lost or by the harsh words of the past, it's defined by the possibilities of tomorrow, by the lessons I've learned, and by the power of my own resilience. As I move forward, I carry with me the memory of those painful days, not as a burden, but as a reminder of the fire that once burned in me, a fire that, despite everything, refused to be extinguished. I've turned betrayal into a blueprint for reinvention, and I'm committed to forging a future that's entirely my own. Whether it's through the creative projects I launch, the relationships I nurture, or the everyday moments of quiet triumph, I know that I have the strength to build a life that's rich, meaningful, and unapologetically authentic. So here I am, standing on the threshold of a new chapter, one that promises both challenges and endless opportunities. I'm ready to face the future head-on, armed with the knowledge that my worth is not defined by anyone else's actions or words. I've learned that true success comes from within, from the courage to persevere when the odds are stacked against you, and from the unwavering belief that you deserve to live a life filled with passion, purpose, and respect. This isn't the end of my story, it's just the beginning. Every day, I continue to write new chapters, to innovate, to create, and to love deeply. And while the scars of the past may remain as quiet reminders of what I've endured, they no longer hold me captive. Instead, they serve as badges of honor, proof that I've weathered life's harshest storms and emerged not only intact, but stronger and more resolute than ever before. As I close this chapter and look toward tomorrow, I'm filled with gratitude for every trial, every setback, and every small victory that has led me to this moment. I've learned that sometimes, the most painful experiences are the ones that teach us the most about who we truly are. And I stand here today, not as a victim of circumstance, but as a testament to the power of resilience, the beauty of reinvention, and the endless possibility of starting over.